so you guys know Tagliafico is looking to leave Ajax. Actually, he already wanted to leave last summer if there was a decent offer. Let's be honest. I mean, it's not like he really needs to leave Ajax. He always said, I like it here. I like Ajax. I like playing for the crowd. But looking at my age, at the where I am at my career, if I can play in a nice league, I would definitely take that chance. And basically, that's where he is. So far, it's been very quiet. Still nothing regarding Tagliafico. So let's say he does get an opportunity late in the summer to leave. It means that we have to find a solution. So there were a couple of names popping up, of course. The most logic one was Wijndal from AZ. Not a cheap one, by the way. Van Aanholt, also another opportunity, who is a free agent, by the way. And also, the statement that we came up with was, do we really need to go for these names, or can we not just put the Rensch on the left side and let him play there? Because Rensch has proven this season that he's very versatile. He can play at different positions, right back, left back. I think Ten Hag even tried it, maybe not successfully, but Ten Hag said that he's even capable of playing not only center back, which he played in the youth, but also in the midfield. So we have a player that has grown, is looking to play more minutes next season. Why not give him the opportunity to play on the left side? So do you guys agree with this, or you guys are thinking, no, we really need a typical left back for that position if Tagliafico leaves?
It's tricky. I would be very content if Rensch ended up being the starting left back. I think he's a very good player. He showed it this past season when he really took his opportunity with both hands. Is it optimal? No. I think we can do better. And I think particularly on the left-hand side, again, thinking Ten Hagian logic here, if Tadic is going to be the left winger, I think you want someone who really pushes forward as a more natural fullback rather than kind of doing what he was able to do, what Rensch was able to do on the right-hand side, which was because Antony stayed so far wide. Basically, we used him as like an inverted fullback, and he had the full freedom to, move centrally, which catered to his strengths. He's much more of a kind of like a clever Zinchenko-y type fullback who might like come central and pop up in areas where you can kind of play as an extra midfielder and do sort of creative things like that, knowing that Antony was basically always the guy holding the width on the right-hand side. Tadic on the left, we like to give him a lot of freedom to tuck inside. That's where we want him, is receiving the ball more centrally. So when you have him out there on the left, I think that's when you want a more natural, left-footed outlet on the left side. So I think it would be more than fine. Again, it's the Eredivisie. We're so talented. Rensch is so good. I think in the majority of games, Rensch is our left back. We still have a very successful season. I have no doubt about that. But I think to really kick on and do as well as I think we should this season, I think we probably want a more natural attacking left back, whether that's Wijndal. I don't think I really want Van Aanholt. I wouldn't mind it. Free transfer, not the end of the world. But if it's not Wijndal, I would hope that we at least explore some more creative, younger options. One name that I don't know really what his deal is. He might honestly be on the way to another Spanish club, but there was a guy at like a small team at Huesca, Javi Galan, like incredible left back. So I hope we would do some sort of creative thing like that before we get to Patrick Van Aanholt. But I do think getting a more natural left back should happen. But again, content with Rensch if we really end up with that.
Yeah, so all good points, but I think, something that we haven't mentioned yet is I think a lot of it has to do with what happens with Moussaïr Mazraoui, because there is actually a very good chance that he leaves this season, which would be unfortunate because he is, a good player. That being said, if that happens, then I think Rensch is 100% getting the starting right back role, which seems to be, I know he's excellent with both feet, but that seems to be the logical replacement for him. If Mazraoui stays and Tagliafico leaves, which I think is a foregone conclusion at this point, I don't know who and I don't know how much, but I think he's earned the right to move on. And he's done, last season wasn't great, but he's done very well for us. Would I be comfortable with Rensch there? I I think yes, but it depends also on if we can find a good insurance policy, so a back, and that's hard to find because, if you sign a talented youngster, they want to play. So there might not be enough minutes there, and if you sign an older player, are they Ajax caliber if, Rensch, God forbid, hurts his Achilles tendon and he can't play the whole season. And then, of course, like we also do have to think that like if Rensch does play and he doesn't perform properly, or he, misses a few games, could Daley Blin slot in there again? Never been a natural fullback. The lack of pace is a serious concern. I know I don't remember if he played there last season. He's always done okay, but again, he's not ideal for that. Martinez, again, not a natural fullback either. I think he's kind of wasted there, to be honest. So would I be comfortable with it? Yes, but with caveats. And then some of the replacements that you mentioned. So I'm not as familiar with that Spanish player from the small team. But Van Aanholt, maybe he's obviously an attacking. I mean, he's basically almost the second left winger. Very attack focused. Would be free, so that's good. Player I like is Ludwig Augustinsson from Werder Bremen, who of course were actually relegated this season. So there's a good chance that I don't know, would he be open to going to Ajax? Maybe. So yeah, I mean, I would say yes, but with caveats. And yeah, that's and of course Corona and financial might determine just how good of a replacement can we get, and if it's determined internally that the type of player that we could spend money on isn't that much better than Rensch, yeah, I'd be fine with Rensch there. So
yeah, I think we also have to mention that in the youth there is a guy that actually has a lot of potential. He did suffer a very huge injury, and he came back, and still Ajax gave him an extension recently. So Salahadin is a very good left back, but I think he needs maybe a season. Maybe if he does extremely well in the first couple of months, maybe he will get a chance as well. So that also gives maybe Ajax a little bit to think about what type of player they should get. If you get Wangel, for instance, you're going to get Wangel. I think he needs at least 2 years to play at Ajax, But if you get somebody who's a bit more mature and maybe wants to just stay at Ajax for a few and just move on, then Salahadin can come and just take over. So it also depends on that, to be honest, in my opinion. All right, guys. So moving on to the final statement of today. One of the players that has been, loved by the fans in general, but Ten Hag always makes it difficult for us. You know that. So it's about Kudus. High expectations about this guy. Unfortunately, not the season we expected from him. He expected from himself. But looking into next season, looking at his capabilities, his talent, his potential, surely he should be first pick, or at least a starter next season on that midfield. How do you guys see that?
I totally agree. I think, I mean, as everyone knows, or maybe they'll learn now, I've been the biggest Kudus fan ever since he signed. I remember discovering him like right before we hadn't been linked at all, saw a few videos, and I was just like, okay, this is the type of guy we need to sign, because this is the type of player who is going to end up being world-class and can lead us back to where we want to be, which is the Champions League. I think he's too talented to not just fully trust him, because if he reaches the levels that we think he can, it's genuinely like Manchester United, Real Madrid, Barcelona type level if he gets there. And I think we saw the beginnings of that before his injury. I mean, before he got injured, those 3-4 games, I mean, he was the best player by far. It genuinely wasn't even close. I mean, I remember the game, the one that really blew me away was Vitesse at home, when Alvarez got sent off in like the 35th minute, and Kudus was basically playing midfield by himself. The midfield was him and Eklenkamp, and he totally dominated that game with 10 men against a team that we didn't realize was actually quite good at the time, which was Vitesse. They ended up having a very good season.
Sure.
And the composure under pressure, the willingness to look for solutions when there aren't any, are traits of the best midfielders in the world. It's the same thing that I said about Frankie all those years ago, is that I don't care if you think he's the finished product right now, but he does the things that the best midfielders in the world do. So we need to give him a chance to do that, because if we hit on him, then that's a guy who ends up dominating Luka Modric in a Champions League round of 16 game. And that's what we need to strive for. And I get that Klaassen and Alvarez are very stable, sturdy players that we know what we're going to get from them. They're good in their own right, even though, again, as people probably know, I'm very much not Klaassen's biggest fan. They're good players. We will win the title with them. We might have a decent showing in the Champions League, but if we really want to go where I always want us to be, Kudus has to play. We have to give him the trust, let him do his thing, and see what he can do.
Yeah. So with this one,
wait. Let me guess. You agree with him, right?
No, I mean I'm a little bit more wishy-washy on this. To be honest. So Marc talked about Kudus's potential, and I completely agree. I mean, this is a player who, doesn't really have, I mean, other than consistency, and how much of that can be chalked to his injury, I'm not sure. Doesn't really have any weaknesses. He's quick, he's good on the ball. He's like Frankie de Jong, but he has a good shot on him. A lot of energy, so he can really slot in, and I think slot in well at any of the three midfield positions. So I'm kind of curious later as to what you guys think, like what his ideal position would be. So will he start? I don't think so. I think Erik ten Hag needs to regain the trust, because after the injury, he was inconsistent. There were times where he looked very good, and then there were times where I think maybe he felt the pressure of, man, I was doing so well before my injury. He kind of tried to do too much. So there were bad passes and a bit sloppy in possession, and trying to dribble 4 different people when you're completely surrounded, and it didn't work out that well for him. Should he? That, again, I'm tempted to say yes, but that would essentially mean, do you drop Klaassen? I think you guys will probably say yes. But this is a guy who, I'm hesitant to say a modern club legend, but, we did bring him back, probably not to sit on the bench. And he did have an excellent season. I know he has limitations. Gravenberch, who I think has a similar type of ceiling, again, like his consistency is a bit of an issue too. And then this 6th position, which we think is, Daley Blind and Edson Alvarez, do you slot him in there? Again, I know Marc has been saying, with the rotation and stuff, there is a chance for everybody to get minutes. I'm less certain about that, because ten Hag, I think, is quite conservative with his team choices. So, again, it's tough to say. I see, a ton of talent in him. I'm just not entirely sure which position he slots in, because his skill set is so diverse. So it's not like, he has to absolutely play somewhere. And then there's good players, kind of ahead of him in the eyes of ten Hag.
Look, guys, in terms of Kudus, right? The thing with me is, I was advocating basically for Kudus, looking at the type of player he is, looking at how we play, how ten Hag really plays our team. I never saw him as a number 10. I mean, it might sound weird to you guys, maybe. A lot of also people from Ghana, fans and everything, all of them advocating, no, he's really very good as a number 10. But the number 10 position with ten Hag is really different. It's more like you should be a type of Donny van de Beek. You should make spaces for others. You should be an Ekkelenkamp kind of. Why? Because the wingers that we have, they cut inside. So there's not a lot of space there, to do whatever you want to do, to give, your passes and everything. And Kudus likes to have the ball, on his feet. That's where he's the most dangerous. He's not somebody who's going to, make spaces for other people. I mean, maybe he can do that, but that's not where his strength is, in my opinion. So for me, like Marc said, the Vitesse game, that's where he's at the strongest. We're down with 10 guys, which means we were being pressed to our own box, which means there was a lot of space, which means he's able to do something that's really good at, and that's carrying the ball and going up front, because I think he's the fastest player we have on the squad. Utilize that. I think he should be able to replace Alvarez. I think he's the most all-around player that we have in terms of speed, technical ability, physical strength. He can defend. I think people underestimate also, I mean, he doesn't have it in his system to defend, to track back, but it's something you can teach him. Because I remember a game, I don't know which game it was exactly, so forgive me for that, but there was one game, I don't forget, it was a European game, I think, and he was the one that was catching up with the attacker all the way from the midfield. And I don't know who was running with him. I think it was Blind. He even went faster than Blind to catch up with that player and just made a tackle.
Not hard to do, though.
No, but I mean, yeah, okay. But
no, I know,
the thing I'm trying to say is, if Ten Hag can utilize, like Kudus in the right manner, he can be by far our best player on that midfield, and he can do what Alvarez does, but so much more than that, even with a little bit of Frankie de Jong type of, sprinkles on top, in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm going too far with this, but that's how I see it.
No, I completely agree. I think this was like the first argument I had around Kudus is when we were signing him. And everyone who said they watched Danish football, because obviously I don't, I was just kind of going off of YouTube videos and little clips and things like that. And the first thing I said was, oh, this guy is a holding deeper midfielder. Because there was a few clips of him just receiving the ball under pressure in his own half of the field, and the ease at which he was able to turn and kind of come out of it. I was like, that is where this guy should play. And I think we saw that all season long. His best performances came a little bit deeper. As a 10, he can still do some very good things. We saw him pop up with a few goals, particularly at the end of the season, playing from that 10 role. I mean, he clearly is very versatile and he has a lot of talent, but I totally agree. His best trait is basically building up from deeper in a similar fashion to Frankie, very press resistant, drives the team forward at speed, thrives in transition situations where we win the ball back from an attacker, and he picks it up and he just drives at the defense. Very reminiscent of the goal, again, alluding to that Vitesse game again, when he ran through the heart of midfield, set it up for Anthony, who tucked it away for the winning goal. And so I agree. And I think he should be playing deeper. And that leads to a difficult situation tactically, because it's like we've been talking about. You've got Blint, you've got Gravenberg, who I think is also better in a slightly deeper role. And then you've got Kudus. And where's the balance really in the midfield? Who's going to be the one making the forward runs? I think you can coach all of that because they're all so good that I don't think it should be a problem. Kind of similar to, a midfield of like a Busquets, a Xavi, and Iniesta, where they're all stylistically somewhat similar. There's no one really there bombing forward constantly, but they made it work because they were all just so smart and so good that I think we've been dancing around this conversation throughout this entire, podcast, is that what's our best midfield look like? And I think it is Blint, Gravenberg, and Kudus. And the orientation of that is kind of up for your imagination. But I think having Blint as the central piece, sitting a little bit more, acting a little bit more as a Busquets, dropping back and acting as a third center back in possession, having Kudus kind of on the right-hand side, dribbling in and, cutting onto his left foot a little bit, and then having Gravenberg, who prefers to play on the left anyway. On the left-hand side, I think it's so talented that it would work. And at that point, you're looking at a deep in the Champions League quality level midfield. In theory, who knows how it fully plays out? Who knows how Kudus really does coming off this injury? I still have high hopes for him. But on paper, Gravenberg, Daley Blind, and Kudus is a very, very, very talented quality midfield. And I think that's the direction we should hopefully be heading.
I'm not sure if I see enough creativity, I feel like that midfield will kind of be missing a Ziyech player, and I know those people don't grow on trees, they're hard to get. But again, just to stay on topic with kind of the statement that you provided us. Yeah. I mean, I think that this player is so good and his skill set is so complete that, they need to find a way to get him in. And again, I think I like him, essentially agreeing with Marc once again, surprise, surprise, as, a deep player that can carry the ball, drive play. If we ever, have to counterattack, he's an absolute engine to just move forward. I think his passing is good enough to be able to release players on the break. Again, I just don't know if Ten Hag has the level of faith Because if Ten Hag was, had the level of confidence that we all have in him, this guy would be, playing every single minute. So will he, get that chance? I don't think he will right away. I think he needs to earn, that, privilege from Ten Hag again. And will it take a little bit? Yes, I think so. A good question would be, is by January, will, Kudus be, starting midfielder? I think yes.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? But by January, or even by October?
It depends how fit he comes back from the preseason, to be honest. Because, look, prior to getting injured, don't forget, he basically gave him a starting 11 position against Liverpool. I mean, if that's not confidence, I don't know what is. In his first year, a couple of months into the season, he was already a starter player. And actually, Ten Hag made a position for him because he was a false nine, playing as a false nine. Look, the only thing I also want to touch upon, it's a little bit deviating from Kudus, but not entirely. But in general, looking at the squad, something that is worrisome for me, also with the Berghuis transfer, is that we're actually going too much for players that like to have the ball on their feet. And we're stepping away a little bit from the Neres type of players. Neres is very good at, like making runs. We have Klaassen that can do that, but Neres has a little bit more speed. The speed is also a second thing that worries me a little bit. We have a couple of players that are not really fast enough. And it doesn't matter if you have like two players in your squad that are like that, it can compensate with other players. But if you look at the players in general now that we have, Tadic, Haller, Klaassen, even Berghuis is not that fast, in my opinion. It does worry me a little bit. I do, for that particular argument, I would also put Kudus in. Because if you're also going to play with Alvarez in your center and you also have Blind on your center, that's too much going to the other side of the spectrum, That's my opinion. And that's why I think Kudus would also balance that a little bit.
No, I completely agree. And I actually think that's a good point. And again, it's why all of these Ajax conversations are so tough, because everyone has an ideal team with all these very talented players. And then we've got Ten Hag, who, for my money, is basically sitting there right now going, okay, Tadic is on the left, Haller is up top, Klaassen is our 10, and Anthony or Berghuis is on the right wing. And
I know I'm deviating a little bit from this topic, but honestly, just one thing. Like this season, the whole argument about, it was something that kept coming up. And every time he puts Tadic in the center, Ajax plays really good. But he really still comes up with that, no, he's the best at the left side. I mean, I see where he's coming from. Maybe Tadic is better on the left side because there's a little bit more room to, do his stuff. But we don't have a striker like Tadic. So what's best for the team, in my opinion?
Yeah, and so, first of all, I totally agree. I think everyone knows my opinion on right. Tadic versus Haller. And so I guess just to get to the roundabout way I was getting to this point is that the way that Ten Hag builds his teams, that's where I agree with you that Kudus should undoubtedly play. Because if it's going to be that Tadic, Haller, Klaassen, Berghuis type system, then I fully agree. We have very little speed. And in the modern game, speed kills. You need to be very athletic. And it's just a matter of fact. Players like Blint are outliers. They're not the rule necessarily. And so I think when you look at the way that Ten Hag builds his team, Kudus should 100% be playing. And then you think the way that anyone would build this Ajax team, Kudus is still so talented that he has to play. So I just think the way, ultimately, how good and how uniquely talented Kudus is, to bring it all back to the original point here, Kudus is too good. You have to get him on the field. Similar to Lisandro Martinez, honestly, you have to find a way to get him in there. Whether it takes, like David was saying, a couple months to kind of get himself going again and rediscover that form that he had at when he first arrived. Maybe it does take a little bit of time, and I would be okay with that. But I think if we're thinking of the season in maybe quarters, by the second quarter, which is really when the Champions League starts, he better be in that team, or else I will be banging my fists on the timeline every single day.
And one more thing that I think also might really give him a boost in general. I did feel sometimes, especially when he got injured, picked up that injury, that he was really lonely as a player, like really alone and everything like that, having his family far away. He's a young player still, having such an injury. And also when he came back, I felt he was a little bit, how do you call it? Like
a loner.
Yeah, a loner. I don't know if you call it alienated or something like that. I don't know. But for that reason, and also looking at the speed and the balance of the team, I really hope that Kamaldeen goes through, because that would be a great addition on so many levels. I mean, also for Kudus, like having somebody like the same as with Anthony coming from Brazil and having Neres, that was so important for him. I think the same might also do the trick for Kudus. So, and that's not the only reason we should get Kamaldeen, by the way, but I'm just saying for Kudus' sake.
Yeah. 17 million euros for a friend is
no, but he's. I mean, everybody knows how good he is. People saying he's even better than Kudus. So, I mean, I hope that goes through. So that's the only thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any opinion on that, but that is a very good point. And I think us as fans, we only really see what, the Ajax social media gives us and stuff like that, So if we see players hanging out, we assume everybody's a good friend and everybody's, at home and settled. But of course, in reality, that's not the case. So I think that's a very good point. And to be honest, I kind of noticed that with Razvan Marin last year. It seemed like he did it seemed like, and it's just social media, but I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know, but he was just kind of always alone. And I kind of wonder if, his play was affected by him not settling in. So, that is definitely a good reason to bring in Kamaldeen, just to have another person that he's familiar with.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's something, like you said, we take for granted a little bit. And I actually remember, I think I said the same thing to my brother, but it was more in like a negative way, because I hated Marin from day one. I just saw him receive the ball in midfield and I was like, this guy's not good enough. I'm sorry. But I remember that I saw a video of him again, just like on the Ajax YouTube at their trip. And I was just like, look at that. It looks like no one even likes this guy. like get him out of here. So, honestly, I feel bad about that now, but it is a valuable point that, maybe the Onana suspension, he couldn't be around the team anymore. Like he was one of his good friends as well. Like a brutal injury right when you're playing as well as he is. Mentally that's hard to come back from. I'm sure he was hesitant in what he could and couldn't do. I'm no world-class athlete, but I hurt my knee 2 months ago, and even just trying to come back and play, there's some things where I'm like, ooh, do I really want to try that right now? Like, no, I'll take it easy. So I think we need to be in the same way that we kind of look past some of the issues with Klaassen because, he eventually scores a goal, or the way that many people are with Haller because he eventually scores a goal. I think with Kudus, people came on him very hard at the end of the season because he had these sky high expectations after the first 3-4 games that he played. And then we expected him to just come right back into it, when he would just come on for 10 minutes at the end of a game, and didn't have time to really get himself going. So as long as Ten Hag gives him chances, play him a full 90 minutes, even if it's not week in, week out, home game, Utrecht, little rotation, play him the full 90 minutes, get his confidence back. You don't need to play him every game, but we just need to give him more trust than we did at the end of the season, even if his performances weren't so great, because I think that always helps you. It's similar to Gravenberg. There was a point last season where it was a little bit of the same thing where he was playing kind of bit part and he wasn't always so great. And eventually we kind of just made the decision, like, Gravenberg is our future here, so we're going to play him no matter what. And I think at that point, he got more comfortable with himself and his performances improved. And you get more comfortable in the system and you start figuring things out a little bit more. So I think at the very least, giving him enough minutes as a starter with the top team, not just with the guys who are kind of coming in and out, will give him a platform to do well. And then, like David said, by October, November, maybe then he's really into top gear and then we see the best of Kudus.
I also want to add something to that, because you just made me realize something. If you look at the midfield, right, we're talking about the midfield positions that need to be filled in. Look, he has to actually do much more than just play well. He has to do like at least 20% better than what the players are doing right now in the midfield. And why am I saying this? Let's be honest. I mean, not everyone, but most of the Ajax fan class is a fan favorite. That's true. Apart from his technical ability, if you look at him objectively, he's nowhere near as Kudus, but he's a fan favorite. Then you have Alvarez. That guy has become a hero for the Ajax fans. So that's also something in the back of their mind. Then you have Blind probably on the midfield, like we discussed. There is no way. I mean, Blind is also very much loved by all Ajax fans. And then you have also Gravenberch coming from the youth academy. If you come from the youth academy, you always have you're always preferred a little bit more than a player that's brought from the outside. I mean, that's how it works, you know? And Kudus has to basically compete against all those players. So it's not only enough to play a little bit better than those players. No, he has to come and really show, listen, I'm much better than you guys are. And that's what he has to do at such a young age. And that's very hard to do.
Can I give a bit of a hot take real quick?
Of course.
And I'm curious how you guys are going to react to this. I would not be opposed to, and I know it's not as easy as, like Football Manager, you just sell players like it's nothing. I would not be opposed to selling Alvarez, to be honest. I do not see him getting that much better. I do not think that he has a unique skill set. Yes, he can play, center back and stuff like that, but the position, that he takes in the back line is covered by Schurz, who doesn't have many minutes anyways, and Timber. I think that if you get a good bid, 15, 20 million, I would not at all be opposed to selling him. And I have nothing against the guy. I love his mentality. I love that fighter mentality. I love how he redeemed himself in the eyes of the fans by coming on so strong in the second half. But for me, I think that's a way to, get Kudus a bit higher, to more likely to get minutes. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I would not be opposed to it. And I'm curious what you guys think.
No, I totally agree. I think the way that I always think about Ajax, and I'm a little elitist, I think, in this way, that I really do think we should be competing to be in the Champions League quarterfinal genuinely every single season. I think with the amount of talent that comes from our youth system and the amount of talented players that want to play for us, we basically have our pick of the top talents from Norway and Denmark and Belgium. These guys want to play for us, knowing that, hey, great system, great team, we'll probably win titles, and I'm virtually guaranteed to play in the Champions League. And Ajax is very generous about letting you go at the end of it. So I think our standards should always be very, very high. And for me with Alvarez, totally agree with everything you said. He's not a unique skill. He doesn't bring a unique skill set. He does it well. But when you see him in the highest level games, which we started to see towards the end against Roma and, the year before against Chelsea, he's just not at that level. He's a good player. He's probably like a Europa League level player. And it's very similar to the points that I've made about Klaassen this whole time as well. I see him and Klaassen as pretty similar case studies in a way, and that we know that they're good enough to win us the league. We know they're good enough to get us on a pretty decent Europa League type run. But if we really want to go the distance and make noise like we did in 18-19, the standards have to be a little bit higher. So I totally agree with you. Coming off a good season as well, if a Valencia or a Sevilla or one of those teams bids 20 million for him, which is, there were already rumors the year before that Valencia wanted him for like 12 or 14 million. So I agree. Why not? I think you can continually look to push ourselves further, and that might be the best we get. So I don't think it's a hot take. I think maybe amongst some people on Twitter it would be, but I think it's I agree. Once again, we're just same page.
Honestly, I don't agree with you guys. So I'm going to go a different direction. But, the thing is that it's a hard one, because if you're an Ajax fan, basically, most of the people, if you're an Ajax fan, you basically are attracted to the team or to the club because of their philosophy, right? Their attacking style, their beauty of the game. Alvarez does not fit that. I mean, let's be honest. I know that as well. But the thing that Alvarez brings, and also Martinez, by the way, but Martinez is a much better football player. So I will leave that out for now. Alvarez is such an important player. We don't have another player like Alvarez. You cannot substitute Alvarez with any other player that we have on the team, like for real. I said that Kudus is able to do everything, is all around, and even able to defend like Martinez, but I don't think he can do it as exceptionally well. The mentality, the fight, the spirit, everything that he brings into the team, I think that's something that's missing. And it's missing also in the youth academy. We don't train our youngsters to be like that. So it's really something that I think Ajax has discovered, bringing Davinson Sanchez, for instance. Those type of players, they bring something that we don't have. We don't teach our players. And I think it's a very good balance and mix to have in your team. Does that mean that Alvarez has to play every game? No. I think you have to look at the opponent. You have to look at what you need. You have to look at what you want. And then you can play Alvarez. But I do think that for certain games, even at a high level, I would not say he's not Champions League material. I would say it depends on the game that you're playing and what you want to realize. But he is such a big filter for the defensive line because Ajax is always taking a lot of chances playing high up the field. Don't forget that. I mean, we're going to build up, basically. And let me make a hot take of my own. If we would have Alvarez against a Spurs game, we wouldn't have lost that game.
To be fair, I think if we played my boy Sven Botman in that game instead of Magayan, I think we would have won it too.
If we had been playing Alvarez in that Champions League session, I don't think we possibly maybe even would have gotten that far. Because Lasse Schöne, which I guess was the one who had his position, or Frankie, I mean, I think that those are far superior players. And Juan, I think you are 100% true about this, rabid dog mentality. And I say that, as a complete compliment that, Martinez has, that Tagliafico has, that Alvarez has. But, for me, is that worth potentially turning down a $20 million bid?
No,
I don't know. And remember, we need money. And, if, again, this is all hypothetical, but if a team offered $20 million, you could reinvest half of that, 10 million into a similar type of player that is maybe not at that level yet, and kind of bring in, because I completely agree. It is important and it is needed. But, I think, that type of quality is a dime a dozen, to be honest. There's a lot of players that are hard, sturdy players. But, I don't think it's particularly uncommon, in the footballing world to have that.
And we should also, just to say one thing as well, because you mentioned Lasse Schöne. It took us like more than a year, because the season before this season, we already had problems on that position. That position is so hard on Ajax. I mean, the hardest position for Ajax is number 9 position, but I think the second hardest position is the like controlling midfielder, the holding midfielder. It's so difficult to play at that position. And we had Frankie and we had Lasse. Frankie left was already a problem for us, and then Lasse left. That became like a really problem for us, knowing where or which player to play there. And I think it took a very long time, but we found a balance. We found Gravenberch and Alvarez playing most of the games. But I think if you sell him, okay, look, if we get 20 million for him, of course, we should sell him. I mean, everybody is for sale at Ajax. Let's be honest about that. But don't underestimate how difficult it is to fill in that position. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was actually funny too, because when he first came, it was 4 months into it. Everyone on Twitter, was going after him. I mean, I remember some of the more popular accounts on Twitter, tweeting, I hope this guy never plays midfield for my club again, and all this type of stuff. And I remember I was always like a little bit more positive about him than most. I remember seeing him at the Chelsea game that we ended up losing at home. And I remember he actually had like a header off the post in that game. And he was kind of like, throwing himself about, making himself useful on set pieces. And I was like, this guy's useful. He's not great, but he is useful. And I think that's the same perception I have of him today. And that I've always thought he's a very useful player. He works very hard. I would almost compare him to Fabinho a little bit. Covers a ton of ground, wins a lot of tackles, very good on set pieces, both offensively and defensively. There's a role for him in the team, but if we want to elevate ourselves, like I said, he shouldn't be a de facto starter. So I know you weren't saying that's what he should be, and everything like that, but it's like, if it came down to it, who would I want to be the squad player in our team? Maybe this will be a hot take. It would be Alvarez over Klaassen, because I think Alvarez, like you said, I think he brings that fighting spirit that we don't really have aside from Lisandro Martinez, just someone who wants to go in there, win a bunch of tackles, defend for his life and be dangerous on set pieces and stuff. I think that's useful. Whereas I think like Klaassen's skill set is more replaceable. So if it was between one or the other, that's who I would pick. But I just think going back to David's initial point, if a good bid comes in, I'm happy to sell him, hand the keys over to Kudus and say, all right, man, you've had a season to, get your feet wet. You know what the role is. We've talked it through you about what we should be doing here, what this position requires. It's your turn. You've seen it, and let's go from there. So I think there's arguments to be made on both sides about Alvarez's value and should he be a starter and all this type of thing. But I think that's where I land. If there's a good bid that comes in, sure. If not, hopefully just a squad player who starts, every odd game and can be a useful contributor.